Welcome to your beginner's guide to Formula 1 2020. Now, every year I have been doing YouTube, I like to do a little refresh, a brand new beginner's guide, because things change, things need updating, and so today, your 2020 edition, hopefully, is the best one yet. Anyway, what are we going to cover in today's video? Because I'm sure a lot of you are coming from completely different angles. Some of you may have never seen Formula 1 at all in the past. Others may be returning fans from years gone by. Others might be casual fans that enjoy the game but perhaps want to watch the full season in full beams this time around in 2020. So, this is what I'm going to be covering in today's video, and also in the description there will be timestamps, so if you're not interested in the season layout but you're looking for rules and regulations, say, you can go in the comment section below and jump straight to that section. But yes, in today's video I'm hoping to cover all aspects of Formula 1 in as basic detail as possible. So some of it may come across a little bit pedantic, but I'm trying to do my best to really cover all different fans from all different aspects. So these are the headings I have gone with. The season layout, where do we go? What are we doing? The championship, what are the drivers racing for? Rules and regulations, pretty self-explanatory. Likewise with flags and tyres. Teams and drivers, I will take a little bit of a look out, but you may already know I have done a full half an hour length video all about that topic, so if you want to see that in particular, I would highly recommend going and checking out the full video on that particular section. And what's new in 2020? There's not a lot, but there are a few different bits and bobs I'd like to clear up with you guys. And if you've got any questions, feel free to throw them down in the comments section below. Likewise, if there's anything I've missed out, or if there's any new revelations or new bits of details and information over the year, I will update you in the pinned comment in the comments section below. Shall we get started? Season layout. Now, a lot of people when they come to Formula 1 can sometimes be a little bit put off, a little bit scared by the season layout. The calendar is quite long and the weekend itself is quite complex, especially if you've come from a background of never watching racing before. The official calendar at the start of the season looks a little bit like this. However, things have changed slightly, and as I'm sure you're all aware, this video was scheduled to be uploaded in February, before the season started. However, with all the global events, we have not got racing just yet, so now our calendar looks a little bit like this. Only 8 races are currently confirmed, starting the season with a double header in Austria, heading to Hungary, 2 races in the UK, Spain, Belgium and Italy making up the final 3 rounds. However, this is not the final calendar. I want to reiterate that. Keep your eye on that comment section down below, and over the year, Formula 1, as the fluid event and fluid situation continues to develop, they're going to announce more races at suitable times. So the calendar supposedly is still going to be between 15 to 18 races over the entirety of 2020. Only 8 confirmed so far. All of them I would highly recommend watching, as this season is going to be all over the place. But my personal favourites from this very short calendar we have at the moment include Silverstone in the UK, Spa in Belgium, Monza in Italy would be my 3 favourite circuits, but I think actually all of the races, all of the 8 so far confirmed, are pretty spicy indeed. And we've also got the likes of Bahrain, Japan, Abu Dhabi, all set to try and put a race on at some point throughout the year, with new circuit Vietnam also, fingers crossed, trying their best to jump onto the calendar for 2020. But as you will see in the comments section down below, again I will try my very best to keep that updated, but this is the one section of the video that I've had to change thanks to the current situation. But just keep an eye, as this will change pretty much on a week-to-week basis. Where can you watch? Well, the simple answer is it varies region by region. Here in the UK, we can watch it on Sky Sports for a premium fee, which is a little bit of a pain in the backside, but we also get to watch it on Channel 4 on a highlights package. So it's not live racing. It's usually about 5 hours after the race, which isn't everyone's cup of tea. I get that, but that's what we have here in the UK. In the USA, you can watch it on ESPN, and for the most of Europe and also other places around the world, you can watch it on Formula One TV. Formula One's paid subscription service, a little bit like Netflix, not as good in my opinion. That is an option, but also on YouTube, Formula One uploads all of its highlights from races, qualifying, practice, so even if you can't watch the race live, there is usually 5 to 10 minutes worth of highlights on their YouTube channel. It's something if you don't have options. But yes, I know a lot of my viewers come from India, South Africa, Malaysia. So if I'm totally honest, it's worth checking yourself. But that is the main three: ESPN, F1 TV and Sky Sport. That is the most broadest terms I can do without going through all the 200 plus countries in this video. So yes, would recommend doing that. The race weekend itself can be a little bit daunting, I can't lie, but once you get the grips of it, it's straightforward. The layout looks long, but what I would definitely recommend if you've never seen Formula One before, don't worry about Thursday. Don't worry about practice. Qualifying, maybe, but the race, that's the real meat and potatoes. That's what you want to be watching to try and get you not only into Formula One, but try and understand the broader context of the weekend. But on a Thursday, that's the day where the teams show up to the track. We usually have press conferences, different little bits of information, wiggle their way out through the media networks. Nothing too crazy, but the hype starts building up for the race weekend. On a Friday, we have two practice sessions, both 1 hour and a half. And this is the opportunity for teams to test the car, to drivers to learn the circuit, any upgrades to be put on the car to see if they're working and not working. And yes, there's two of those on a Friday. On the Saturday, we then have another practice session, this time only an hour, and that's in the morning, and in the afternoon, we have qualifying. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a moment. On Sunday, the race, the big day, the one everyone's looking forward to. And yes, if you are new, I would recommend just watching the Sunday, but also qualifying. I love qualifying, probably just as much as the race, I know, a little bit sad. So I would recommend those two being the ones you would watch. And even me, a die-hard, super sweaty Formula One fan, even I don't always catch practice. They're a little bit long, can be quite uninteresting, so don't worry about that too much. But the option is there if you would like to learn a little bit more about Formula One. Qualifying is broken down into 3 sessions for F1, starting with qualifying 1. Now, technically, it's one long session, usually lasting between an hour and an hour and a half. Qualifying 1 is our first mini session, and this is where all drivers go out for 17 minutes and post their quickest lap times. Now, once those 17 minutes are over, the top 15 drivers go into qualifying 2. And they have 15 minutes to then produce their best lap time, if that kind of makes sense. And then we have a third qualifying where the top 10 from qualifying 2 move into the top 10 shootout. 10 minutes to produce the fastest time to fight for pole position. Now, for some of you, what I've just said is probably a little bit confusing because you might not even know what qualifying is. And I know a lot of you will think, oh my goodness, he's not going to explain what qualifying is. But yes, in short, it's the opportunity for the drivers to decide where they start the race, what order they start the race. So whoever's quickest in qualifying will start first at the beginning of the race. Whoever's slowest in qualifying 1 will start at the back of the grid on the race, if that kind of makes sense. And a key word that often gets cropped up in qualifying is pole position. Some people last year said in the comments they weren't quite sure what that meant, and pole position, pretty straightforward, is the man who finishes first in qualifying 3. The man who starts the race at the front of the grid, pole position. The grid is just where the cars line up before the race. Hopefully, that's all pretty straightforward. Race day, the main day, the big day. You don't really need to worry about this too much, but the race day layout starts off with a formation lap. So the cars work their way to the grid whilst all the teams are working on the cars. Fans are in the pit lane. The hype is building. So the cars are sitting there in their grid positions decided from qualifying. Before we get the race started, the cars do a formation lap. So they go off one by one. You can kind of see it on screen on the right hand side there. They all follow one another, no overtaking, just making sure the car is working. They then return back into their initial grid slots, but everyone now who was taking pictures of the cars, working on the cars, they've got off the track. The track is completely clear, and then we go racing. A Formula 1 Grand Prix is known as the race. That's just what a Grand Prix is. It's just a fancy term. That sounds pretty cool. A race itself, this is where it gets a little bit strange. The length isn't determined by laps. A Formula 1 Grand Prix is 305 kilometres. Each of the circuits are different lengths for a lap. So Belgium, the longest lap on the calendar, we only have 44 laps in Belgium. Whereas a circuit like Monaco, one of the shorter circuits, we can have up to 78 laps in that particular Grand Prix. So laps isn't really what we measure a Formula 1 distance with, and that's quite a common misconception in Formula 1. However, the maximum Grand Prix is 2 hours. So if there's a big crash and they have to stop the race or go slower because of the crash, and let's say the 78 laps will take them over the 2 hours, they just reduce the laps or introduce a timer. Very, very rarely happens in Formula 1. We've not seen that for a few years now, but I just thought I'd just throw that little bit in there for you. At the end of the race, once the checkered flag has fallen and we have crowned our winner, the car's doing cool-down lap. Again, this isn't anything you really need to know, but I'm just doing formalities just for peace of mind. So, crosses the line, the cars then don't need to go any quicker. They can just slowly work their way back round the lap and into the pit lane. And yes, our top 3 drivers stand on the podium, get to wave to the crowd, handed a trophy. Happy days for the top 3. But I thought I'd throw that in there as well, just in case you've never seen Formula 1. So 1st, 2nd and 3rd get a trophy. 4th to 10th get points, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. And the rest of the grid get a big fat 0 and a very disappointing ride home. The championship. What are the drivers going for? How would they earn points? What is it all about? Well, this slide is perhaps slightly complex if you've never seen Formula 1 before, but what it breaks down to is 2 world championships. There is both the team's championship, known as the Constructors, and there's also the main one that everyone's really interested in, the Drivers' Championship. But the Constructors is also interesting, but it's the drivers that everyone remembers. How these drivers win the championship and how these teams win the championship is by scoring points over the 21 races in the season. The point system is on screen there. It's a little bit complex, but not too mad. If you finish first, you get 25 points. If you finish second, 18, third, 15, and so on, all the way down to 10th, where you score 1 point. There is also the option, if you score the fastest lap of the race, you also score 1 point, but you have to finish inside the top 10 to score that point. So don't worry about the fastest lap too much. It was a new rule introduced last season. Doesn't really make much of a difference, but the maximum total a driver can score in a weekend is 26. So a race win in a fastest lap, 26 points. There's no points in qualifying. All the points are on the Sunday. So potentially the maximum points available is 546. That's 21 races, that is. I took away China from the calendar because we know that one is cancelled. And the minimum points is 0. It is a possibility you can score 0. Last year, Lewis Hamilton was our champion. 413 points he scored over the season. And George Russell finished dead last. Only driver to score 0, but poor George, he is a good driver. If you've never seen Formula 1 before, just because he scored no points and Hamilton scored 413, that is not the best way of measuring how good a driver is, how bad a driver is, because all the cars have different speeds, different abilities. So whilst points determines the championship, it doesn't necessarily always show who the best drivers were in that particular season. Rules and regulations. There's a hell of a lot of rules and regulations in Formula 1, and if I was going to do a video talking about every single one, it would be a very, very long video indeed. So what I have done is to try and tailor this to people who perhaps have never seen racing, or what's different about Formula 1 to the likes of MotoGP, Formula E, things like that. So, for starters, your basic racing rules apply. Okay, no deliberate crashing, no cutting the corners, no going backwards, no illegal blocking, getting in the way of other cars on purpose, none of that. None of that. So if you've ever seen a race on Grand Theft Auto, Fast and Furious, whatever it is, the basic racing rules apply. But Formula 1 does have its own special rules, as I have called it. One of the more interesting ones is that during a race, the drivers have to make at least one pit stop. And the reason for this is that the drivers have to use at least 2 different tyres. I'll talk about that in a moment in the next section, flags and tyres. But they need to use at least 2 different tyre sets during a race. The safety car is a feature in Formula 1. If there has been a big crash or even a little crash and there is bits of front wing and debris all over the circuit, obviously, we don't want cars going round at full pelt, 200 miles an hour, when there's a car in the middle of the road crashed. So, the yellow flags are out. We've got to slow down. We bring out a safety car, which is a Mercedes road car. It's quite a quick little Mercedes road car. And what it does, it goes to the front of the circuit. All the other cars line up behind in the order they currently are, and they go slow around the track until the crash is cleared. We also have a virtual safety car. The key is in the name. The actual car doesn't come onto the track, but all the other cars racing are forced to slow down. DRS is a term that will often be thrown around this season. That is the drag reduction system. You don't need to remember that. But what it is, you'll see on this lovely illustration of a McLaren on the right hand side, the blue rear wing at the back. What that will do is when a car is within 1 second of the car in front on a designated zone on a circuit, that will open. That will flip upwards and open, giving the car a straight line speed boost to overtake the car in front. They don't always manage to pull off the overtake, but I thought I would throw that in there because that's also something that new fans are a little bit worried about and perhaps don't know what it is. Flags and tyres, again, is something that not all of you will be interested in, but it's a key part of Formula 1. Fun with flags. There's a lot of them. They don't always show up over the course of a weekend. A green flag, pretty straightforward. If there's been any kind of incident, they wave the green flag after it is all cleared up. Means we can go racing again. The checkered flag, the classic racing flag, waved at the start and the finish of a Grand Prix. That's new for this year, waving it at the finish of the race. They did it in years gone by, but it's brought back for 2020. A yellow flag means there's some kind of incident, crash, debris, an animal on the track we have seen in the past. Something like that tells the drivers to slow down. A red flag is completely stopping the race. This might be heavy rain, a really serious incident, anything like that. Stop the race, return to the garage. Something serious has happened. A blue flag is for the slower cars. If you're a driver, you never want to see a blue flag. It means a car is coming up to lap you. So they have gone so quick, they are now a lap in front. If you're given the blue flag, you have to get out the way. You cannot race cars that are a lap in front. A black flag, even worse for a driver, means you've been a naughty boy and you have been disqualified from the race. And the black and white flag, reintroduced last season, is a warning flag. So this is literally a triangle effect almost. Half black, half white. It's not like the checkered flag, and it's a warning. It means you've done something a little bit off, a little bit naughty. Don't do it again, pretty please. Tyres in Formula 1. The tyre supplier is only Pirelli. In years gone by, in the mid-2000s, we had different tyre suppliers, Michelin, Bridgestone. Now we only have Pirelli. Over the course of a weekend, there are 3 tyre choices. So during a race, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, the teams and the cars, the drivers themselves, have to use 2 tyre compounds, as they are known. So they might say, start the race on the soft, end the race on the medium, something like that. But you can do more. You can do all 3. You can do soft twice in a row and then do medium. You can do start on the hard, go onto the soft, back onto the hard. It's As long as you use 2 different ones during the race, you're fine. And if there's wet weather tyres, which do exist, we have the intermediates and the wets. Probably should have put that on screen, but we very rarely have wet races these days in Formula 1. We do have different wet tyres depending on how wet the circuit is. If that's the case, you do not have to use 2 different sets of tyres. I have included C1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 at the bottom. This is the much more sweatier and more detailed way of looking at tyres. I hate this. I never look at this. But if you really want to know, this is all of the tyre ranges available and at a weekend. Say we go to the Spanish Grand Prix. They pick 3 of those. So 1, 2, 3. They could pick 3, 4, 5. They could pick 2, 3, 4. And that will be the softest one. So let's say the C2 soft, C3 medium, C4 hard. But let's say there's a circuit that's a little bit harder on the tyres. The tyres break up a little bit more. Let's say at a circuit like Great Britain. Let's say they say C5 is the hard, C4 is the medium, C3 is the soft. Again, it's far too complex. They don't need to tell fans that, but I know some people like to know about that. I know some media companies, Sky in particular, love to talk about that. For me, it's way too over the top to what we need to really know as fans. Teams and drivers. I mentioned right at the beginning, at the content section, I have done a separate video on this, going into way more detail than I probably should have for each team and driver. So if you want to know more about that, you can head over there. But I would just do a quick tour of the teams and drivers in 2020. There are 10 teams on the grid. Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. There's been no racing as of yet, but these are the 3 teams expected to be at the front, fighting for the victories, fighting for the podiums. We then have what is known as our midfield. McLaren, Renault, AlphaTauri. They're a new branded team for 2020. They're not a new team completely. They were known as Toro Rosso since the mid-2000s, but this year have had a complete rebrand. AlphaTauri, thanks to Red Bull, who own the team. They have a brand new clothing company called AlphaTauri, so that's who they are for this season. Racing Point, this is their last year technically in Formula 1, as next year they're going to become Aston Martin, which is a really cool thing in Formula 1. We then have Alfa Romeo, Haas, the only American team on the grid, and Williams. Drivers, there's 20 of them. But on this year's grid, we have 3 world champions, or at least 3 former world champions. Lewis Hamilton is our current world champion from last year. He has 6 world titles and will go for a record 7th in 2020. We've got Sebastian Vettel, who has 4 world titles, 2010 through to 2013. And we've also got Kimi Räikkönen, who won it all the way back in 2007. We've also got other race winners who are not yet champion. Max Verstappen at Red Bull, Valtteri Bottas at Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton's teammate, Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel's world teammate, and Daniel Ricciardo, who drives for Renault in 2020, is also a multiple winner and has won the Monaco Grand Prix. The other driver I want to make note of is Nicholas Latifi. He is our current only rookie in 2020, so I thought I'd show him a little bit of love in this section. What's new for 2020? The answer is not a lot, to be totally honest with you. There are 2 new circuits in the form of Vietnam, which again may be cancelled or postponed, so check that comment section. We've also got Zandvoort, which is in the Netherlands, potentially also could be cancelled. We're not too sure just yet. This isn't a brand new circuit. We did race here in the late 90s, but it has returned in all its glory. Some much needed upgrades. Should be a lot of fun. Start procedures. The drivers this year are given more flexibility on how they do their starts. The automation is being taken away. Manual starts, 90% manual. If you have no clue what I just said, basically the drivers do their own starts rather than a computer doing it for them, which is fantastic for Formula 1. The checkered flag returns at the end of a Grand Prix. There is less testing over the season, so traditionally we have testing in the winter, which we have already had in 2020. That usually lasts 8 days, but this year it lasted 6 days. We usually also have a testing session during the summer break of Formula One. So in August, there's no testing or no racing in Formula One. This year, there's nothing at all, which is fantastic. Relaxed penalties. This was kind of introduced last season with the black and white flag making its return into Formula One. But what this means is that rather than following the complete letter of the law that we have seen in the past, the stewards are going to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to penalties and so much more. There is a lot of things that in the grand scheme of things don't make a fat lot of difference. So if you really want to know, I would recommend going over to Formula One's official website, but those are the main ones. And even those are quite mundane. There's not really a lot of spicy changes there. And that's basically it. Do you want to learn more though? Because I get a lot of people asking, this is a new feature for 2020, a lot of people saying, well, thank you for your beginner's guide, but I still don't quite understand. I need to do, what more do I need to do to understand Formula One? Where should I go? And it's a difficult one, but I've kind of tried my best to make a list of what you should try and do. Now, again, it's going to be completely different for everyone else. Of course, I'm going to recommend the YouTube community. I think Formula One has an awesome community on YouTube. Obviously, I'm going to recommend my own channel, and I really try and produce content that caters for everybody. I know sometimes it can be a little bit in depth, but I try my best. Other guys that I think are really great, Chamber F1 does some fantastic animations for trying to introduce people to engineering, something I'm not particularly good at. You've also got the F1 Word, who covers content not too dissimilar to me, but he does much more long-form live streams and podcasts and those kind of things. WTF1, the one right on the very end there, they do much more, I was going to say jokey and skits and different things like that. A little bit more light-hearted way of looking at Formula One. But they're just four I picked out. To be honest, most Formula One channels are pretty spicy indeed. The Netflix Drive to Survive series, this is over-dramatised. Take it with a pinch of salt. But to every new Formula One fan I meet, even my brother who hates Formula One and some of my friends who hate Formula One, I cannot tell them enough to watch Drive to Survive. If you have Netflix, again, it's a little bit over the top, but it's a lot of fun. Shows you all the best things of Formula One and tries to help you understand some of the drivers, some of the characters, so you can root for drivers when they show up to a weekend. I know personally, I really learned a lot about Formula One through the game, the official game. Now, this is something that a lot of you won't be interested in, but for me, it really cemented the different rules and regulations, how a different weekend is formed. I definitely know the circuits off by heart thanks to the game, and little things like that really can help bolster your knowledge. Formula One TV that we spoke about all the way at the beginning of the video has an archive, so you can watch old races. I wouldn't recommend that so much, but definitely if you're looking for Formula One right now, that might be a good place to start. But the best advice I can give you is watch the races. The only way you can learn is by giving it a try. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I always say, you don't know unless you give it a go. And I'll end that there. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've learned something today. And yes, if you still have more questions, it's totally fine. Throw them in the comment section below and I will do my very best throughout the year to answer as many as possible. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and if you've enjoyed, I would really appreciate if you could hit that like button, and if you want to keep up to date with Formula One, feel free to subscribe. Thank you guys, and I hope to see you in the next one.